This is the first of what should be a few videos on repairing the mid-60s Bendix radios for the Dodge Darts, Plymouth Valiants, and other Mopars. I have a particular affinity for the narrow body A bodies of the Darts and Valiants of 1963 to 66, the Elwood Engel years. And if you want to get your original radios in tune, or maybe even input a through Bluetooth or a surreptitious phono input into the amplifier stage, an input, we might do a video on that as well. If these radios, if you still have them, usually they're starting to hum because of the bad electrolytic capacitors, and they just need a general tune-up. So I think at least I'm going to show you what it leads to desolder and where to put the electrolytic capacitors. They change a little bit from 63 to 66, so we'll go through a couple of changes on them. What I have here is a 65 Valiant radio. This is a Mopar 222, which is a Bendix 5 BVE. This one for a 64 is a Mopar 218, which is the Bendix 4T BVE, which is really the same radio completely for the Dart. The Dart is a 206 or a Mopar 221, just has a different faceplate. So the repairs are going to be all the same. In fact, for the 66, it's really the same radio for the Valiant as the Fury. Generally, what you're going to need to do is lubricate the mechanical parts for the tuning section, because the lube is dried out. The volume and the tone controls need to be cleaned. The electrolytic capacitors, if they are still operating, are way out of spec, and usually they're leaking some DC current. And in some cases, if your radio is dead or motorboating, it's because they're entirely open or shorted. The indicator bulb is often burned out, and the radio itself needs to have the antenna calibrated, and it needs an RF alignment. And for that, you're going to need some special equipment. You'll need a signal generator and a multimeter. At bare minimum, tool-wise, you're going to need a 1/4-inch socket drive. That's the socket of a general bit driver. Bits are 1/4-inch. So if you don't have, a 1/4-inch socket, just use your garden variety bit driver with no bit in it, and you've got the right size. For your capacitors, there's 2 capacitors, but they're capacitors with 2 sections, so you really need 4 capacitors. The values are going to be 50, 200, 500, and 1,000 microfarads, one of each. Since it's hard to find a 50, a 200, and a 500, you can replace those with commonly found 47, 220, and 470 microfarad capacitors, and get them to handle at least 16 volts. The ones that are in here respectively handle 3 volts or 16, but they're all commonly found now in the 25 volt rating, so you might as well buy them all 16 or 25 volt rated as a capacitor. The dial lamp you'll need is an 1893. That's the kind that has the bayonet mount, the BA9S mount. These are rated at 14 volts and they draw 0.33 amps, so maybe 4.5 watts, something in that range. And they're very cheap to buy. The pack is like $1. If you want to perform an alignment, you're going to need nylon, radio frequency, RF alignment tools, a multimeter, and a signal generator. B&K or any of those companies made a whole host of those things. And they're cheap to buy now. You need to be able to produce 262.5 kilohertz and 1605 kilohertz, so you can align them with a multimeter. A transistor tester is nice if you have one, to test the gain and the leakage of the germanium PNP transistor. Or you can rig up a 9-volt battery, a couple of tight tolerance resistors, and use your voltmeter and make your own to calculate gain and leakage current. There are plenty of tutorials right here on YouTube on how to rig that up. Now, if you're opening up a 63 or 64, a lot of the transistors, instead of being sitting in the TO3 socket, they're in here in some kind of like a truncated version of a TO3, and they're soldered in. So you'll probably want to buy a TO3 socket to replace it. Get a nice proper socket to put it into when you go to replace it. Would be awfully nice. You should have a bench rig like this to test out your radio before you service it, to see what your starting point is. You should help you diagnose things, because you may have to go a little further than just replacing the capacitors. which you should just do anyway because it's good preventative maintenance, whether they actually test good or not, because they're going to fail. These things have been out in the sun and the freezing, and if they're over 50 years old. So, you know, they're going to die on you if they're not already dead. You should have a 12 to 14 volt power supply. So, you know, a battery or a good AC adapter that can supply enough power. You want a 2 amp fuse to protect the radio just in case it's shorted out. A speaker or a dummy load, because you never want to turn on the radio without an output load on the speaker output. And you want an automotive antenna with the appropriate leads. So you set up your bench. You'll have one lead that's your ground wire for 12 to 14 volts. And you're going to attach that to the frame, usually a nut on the back of the case. You want at least one, maybe 2 hot leads, you can see here, and those would be to put in here for your indicator lamp and for your hot 12 volt positive power. On the 64s you only have 1 hot lead, so in that case you'll just use one of the 2. Here's your speaker leads right over here. On some of these, somebody's cut the leads off, so you're going to have to put some new leads on. This is a good opportunity when the radio's open to get them back into proper condition. And then you're ready to test them out, and you should come up with a checklist before and after you work on the radio to say whether or not the electrolytic capacitors have been replaced, whether the germanium transistor has been checked, whether it's been replaced, the tuning section, if it's been cleaned and lubed, the hookup wires, have they been repaired or replaced, the potentiometer clean, the alignment performed, because you want to know beforehand whether it works at all, lights up, if there's hum when the radio is first on, whether it's hum at volume, whether the presets work, how many stations do you get only the strong stations, and then you can have that same checklist for afterwards. Now, to open the case up, at the very least, you're going to need some, just the 1/4 inch bit, and if you're going to take the transistor out, you're going to want a security bit. If you can't get a flathead screwdriver, that's the right size. If you get one of those Harbor Freight ones that has this oval swedged bit, this is the CRV1, but the CRVS one, which is a square bit, works pretty well too, but not as well as the V1 bit. Now, to get the radio open, all you really need to do at first is just take out this screw right back here and the same matching screw on the other side. That's going to be the shortest screw you're going to see in this whole radio. Little stubby fella right here. The rest of the sheet metal screws are going to be slightly longer. They're going to look like this. And the ones holding on the circuit board are going to have a washer on them built into it to help protect the circuit board, to keep the pressure on it even. So once you've got these 2 screws out, the back is going to lift up a little bit. You'll need to press on these 2 tabs. You might need to get a screwdriver under here, but usually a little bit of wiggle pressure under those tabs, and the whole back is going to come off, reveal your circuit board and your components. To get in here, you need to be able to tilt the circuit board. So you're going to take out these 2 screws right here. These are the ones with the washers. Then you can gently lift this rail, which holds the circuit board together, and you'll be able to lift this rail right off and set it aside. You're going to find 2 grounding straps. Sometimes they're just tucked around with a press fit. Sometimes they're soldered on. One way or another, you have to desolder them and remove these 2 straps from the sides so the circuit board is free. Then there's finally a tab on the bottom that the circuit board is in. So don't tilt it until it's lifted out of these tabs, or you'll break the circuit board. Then you can pull the circuit board up slightly and you can tilt it aside. As you can see over here, see, now it's free. Now, if you're going to get the whole tuning section out, you need to really get everything apart, because you're going to really be cleaning this. And to do that, you need to remove the transistor, so you use your security bit to release the tuning section, the volume knob. There are these 2 metal tabs, so get a screwdriver here and pull them outwards, and that'll release them. That'll drop right out. Then you need to remove all the screws on the face. The face on the 65 has the clear cover right on the radio. The 64s and 63s, the clear cover is built into the bezel, and you just have this thing with a press fit with these guys. You get a flathead screwdriver, you come up under here and pry gently, put your tuner all the way to one side, or at least most of the way, and then you can lift gently and just tuck it out of the way and remove it. Then you'll reveal the screws you need to get out. You're going to see 1, 2, 3 across the bottom. Keep them in order. That one is a sheet metal screw. These are machine screws. So go 1, 2, 3, lay them out, and then 1, 2, 3 again in the mezzanine section here, and take them out and lay them out so you know where to put them back in the right place. Then everything is off, and you can take this face off, you can polish it, set it aside for reinstallation later, and everything will be apart in here, and you can get at everything easily, including the tuning area and everything else for cleaning it up. So I guess the next one will be about the electrolytics, so we'll do that on another video.